Hello, I'm Andrew with Pressful, and today I'm speaking with Kyle Campbell. He's the founder and CEO of CTO AI. That is a platform for developers who are working to build applications that are native to the cloud. Kyle, nice talking to you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Andrew.
Why don't you take me through, the process that an app developer would need to go?
In modern software development, there's a lot of really complex tools in order to develop cloud native software and deploy it to the internet, scale it. Most technology companies, most startups, heck, most businesses now have to hire developers to deal with this. And as most of them also know, it's quite hard to keep up with hiring the talent. It's very competitive out there to hire the available talent. So these complex tools often create a challenge where businesses need to hire very specialized talent. When we looked at that problem, we said, hey, how could we make building software in the cloud as easy as possible? We looked at tools like Kubernetes, which is a common product that software developers will use in order to deploy their applications into the public cloud, modularize them, make them transferable between different cloud environments. And we built on top of that a very simple and intuitive experience. So software developers can focus as much of their energy as possible on deploying those products that will add value to customers and spend less time wrangling with the underlying systems that run the actual cloud providers. And therefore, that treats their time and creates a multiple on it so that those businesses get the highest yield from the talent that they're hiring. So when they're using these tools that we provide, they're actually deploying into the cloud providers that they already use, or they're deploying these onto our hosted environment where we host the applications for them. And what we do is as they're working with these tools, we're tracking the progress on how they're delivering the software as a team and reporting back metrics that allow them as the team, as their managers, to really measure and manage the process of driving more efficiency. And it often results in more sponsorship for the software developers. So we like to say that we're a platform for helping software teams focus on delivering applications rather than managing their operations.
Managing their operations seems to be a very development heavy part of the process because, from what I'm understanding, a lot of backends of developing something tend to have to be like developed on site or, made or, coded by individuals. There isn't really like a drag and drop solution to that part of the process. Is would that be accurate?
There's a lot of specialized experience that goes into building the operations that support a development team on delivering software, as well as the infrastructure that allows the software to scale and provide service to hundreds, thousands, millions of users. In the industry, we often refer to this as DevOps, which is short for developer operations. And these are a specialized set of individuals, which most often come from sort of an IT background or a systems background. And they tend to be really specialized at building these cloud architectures that are highly scalable so that they can get to very large numbers of users who are able to use their service without disruption. However, in implementing these modern tools, Kubernetes being one of them, it actually increases the complexity that the software developers who are focused more on user experience, front end development, or even just HTML and CSS, it actually increases the overhead of what they need to be able to learn and work with in order to deliver their code into that environment. So what we try to do is we try to look to both of these groups and say, hey, for the DevOps teams, the infrastructure engineers, you can still accomplish what you need to by building out those scalable infrastructures. But what we do is we actually layer in front of that and give those developers a nice streamlined experience that makes it as frictionless as possible for them to get their products on into that infrastructure and ultimately in front of users to delight them.
What does a more streamlined, user friendly backend look like?
The way we think about it is it should be as intuitive as possible, but also should be data driven and measurable. Ultimately, on our platform, what a developer experiences is they can come to our platform, connect it to their source code on GitHub, for example, and ultimately have whatever code that they've written live to the public internet behind a custom domain and even SSL within about 5 minutes. And from there, all they have to do is simply git push and we rebuild and redeploy that technology. So they're not even thinking about the back end at all. They're just thinking about the code that they're writing. And we're taking care of making sure that it gets delivered into our public cloud. Now, in the case of working with large organizations, again, who have their own IT infrastructure, we can also create what's called a mesh which essentially connects our system to their system and allows us to deploy with the same great experience for the developer into that custom infrastructure. So larger companies with enterprise or IT or compliance and security practices still have root level control over the tools that their operations teams are managing and their own in-house infrastructure.
How does CTO's relationship with the DevOps teams that are using their platform expand beyond just, the back end of development?
Yeah, for the back end and the DevOps engineers, we make their day a lot easier because they're not focusing as much on trying to unblock the software developers who are deploying front-end code. They're focusing more on the hard specialized effort of scaling up those back-end systems. For the front-end developers, we simplify their process so that they can demonstrate their ability to deliver those products. And ultimately what that data represents is sort of an agreement between both sides, as well as with the business and their managers, about what good looks like. And what good looks like, we tend to measure through a couple of really key metrics that are measured based on deep research by the DevOps Research Association. The key metrics are lead time for change and deployment frequency. And this ultimately answers for an engineering manager, a product manager, a CTO, or a CEO. How often is my team able to deliver new features to my customers? And then we also look at deployment failure rate and what's called mean time to recover from a failure. And that's a really great measurement of things like how stable is my software? And if something goes wrong, how quickly can I restore that service? They sort of make up the most important 4 key metrics for all 3 of these groups to agree on. And then once you have that measurement in place, you can implement very simple measures across the organization to try to improve the velocity, improve the efficiency, and ultimately get a higher yield on the time from the developers who you hire.
I see. So that's when you make the pitch about the $300 billion in cost, or the amount of time and development that you save, you're not just talking about, streamlining one aspect of the process. You're talking about, measuring and talking about ways to increase efficiency all the way down the line on each part of the chain of process.
Yeah, the research shows that 300 billion is lost every year in development productivity, and that hiring and access to talent is actually a bigger problem for most executives than access to capital. This is based on the Stripe Coefficient report, which Stripe released a year or 2 ago. Now, when you look into this, a big part of this is that companies often don't invest early enough into the supporting operational framework that these teams use to deliver software. It tends to be one of the things that they only are able to invest in once there's already a problem. And that manifests in we're missing product deadlines or the system is unstable. As a result, what we try to do is make that almost a zero cost effort where you can have a world-class operational experience that makes it super easy for your developers, but also those metrics which guide your understanding of how you're performing. And you get those up and running on day one without having to give up the tools that you prefer to work through. And this means you can bring these tools, these cloud native tools, these measurement tools that can increase that efficiency into organizations earlier. And we expect that over the next 10 years, that sort of earlier adoption will put a dramatic dent into this massive number of dollars that are lost every single year by developers struggling with integrating into their operational systems.
So it's sort of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure kind of situation.
That's a great way to say it.
In the end, what can everybody else look forward to from the services you provide?
Thinking about the end is challenging. That's a long ways out. I don't know if it ever ends. But what I do know is that the macro trend in the world is almost all businesses are having a digital footprint of some sort. They're either working with a third party or internally building their own software and digital products. And that means that they have developers in their supply chain. Now, as these businesses are inevitably doing this, we also have this remote work trend. And this is something we haven't talked about, where a big feature of our platform is that it's also natively accessible in Slack. Now, when you think about this, every business is ultimately going to be having developers in their supply chain somewhere. And if those businesses want to be competitive in the modern world of the digital economy, it's really important that they invest as equally into how that software is delivered to, yes, lower their costs, increase the amount of quality that is produced and provided to their customers, and ultimately allow them to iterate and stay agile to adapt to these shifts in the market. Now, I think that's a competitive advantage today because not every business does that. But I think over the next 10 years, we can expect that these infrastructure tools, some of these cloud providers that developers use, which are so technical right now, will start to fade into the background. Just like in the 70s and 80s, we worked with DOS and these terminal applications. And then now we have this beautiful user interface that we call Mac OS or even Windows 10. I think that's the way that software development is going. I think that's going to open the door for a lot more companies to hire and developers into their supply chain. I think it's also going to open the world to lots more people joining the knowledge economy and the software development as a profession. And I think ultimately that's a really, really important thing. Our mission is ultimately to help all of these software engineers work smarter, not harder, because we think software development is a great career. It's super important to businesses. And the more we can lower the barrier to entry and make deploying cloud software accessible, the better we feel about the future of software development.
And the better equipped that technically minded people and developers are to kind of keep up with the evolution of computer software and app development.
Yeah, so you're right. And that keeps those businesses that they work for competitive, on the edge, and delivering products that their customers love at a highly efficient and competitive rate. We're live now with our new serverless Kubernetes offering. We've also got a free Slack community for anyone who wants to come and just ask questions about software development, DevOps. Check us out at CTO.ai, and feel free to reach out at any point to our team, and we'd be happy to help you get started.
So once again, that is CTO.ai, and we have been speaking to its CEO and founder, Kyle Campbell. Kyle, thank you again, and the best of luck to you.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Pressful. It's so easy, as it should be.